Article 4. Investigation of Mu'jizat, miracles. The word Mu'jiza, which is translated into English as miracles, is a present participle in Arabic, derived from a-jaza, from the radical letters Ain, Jim, Za, which literally means to weaken, debilitate, incapacitate, and hence it means an action which deprives someone of strength or power or ability to imitate, an action which disables or incapacitates someone from imitating it. In religious terms, however, a mu'jiza or miracle is an action performed by a perfect man, which others are unable to imitate. The purpose of such a performance by a perfect man, i.e. a prophet, is to convince people of his prophethood, that he has come by the command of God, and that it is necessary to act upon his guidance and exhortation. By the grace of God and with the help of his light, in this article we want to discuss miracles in detail, their types, occasions, and aspects, so that the readers, in addition to attaining the necessary knowledge of miracles, should prepare themselves for the observation of the manifestation of a miracle in which countless religious and worldly benefits are hidden. Thus, the people of knowledge know that miracles are of several kinds. If divided according to time, they can be called temporary and permanent miracles. If divided with respect to space, they will be called sensory and intellectual miracles. If divided with respect to both time and space, they fall into categories of temporary sensory miracles, temporary intellectual miracles, permanent sensory miracles, and permanent intellectual miracles. This is the original and great division of miracles. That is, these four kinds of miracles are the fundamental miracles which have many branches. If we want to know the names of these miracles with respect to the religious hierarchy, the extraordinary work of the Prophet is called mu'jiza or miracles, and that of a wali, friend of God, karamat. It would also not be out of place to mention that if we have to divide these wonders with respect to possibility, all kinds of miracles are called true, haq, and all branches of magic and sorcery false, batil. However, despite all this, the mass of people have often committed a great error in considering miracles as magic, and were therefore misled. Temporary sensory miracle. This miracle is given by omnipotent God to one of his prophets when the disbelievers demand a miracle as a condition to believe him. But since many disbelievers and the masses do not have an upbringing with true knowledge, they are unaware of rational arguments, and their understanding depends entirely on their senses. Therefore, there is no other way than to perform such miracles in order to convince them. However, despite such miracles, the vast majority often do not abandon their absurd and blind conformity and, except for a few fortunate ones, the rest reject them, considering them to be magic and sorcery. Not only that, they also ridicule and torture the prophets, and consequently they invite divine wrath, and destruction engulfs them. There are many reasons for the prediction by divine command of those who rejected the invitation of the prophets and their miracles, and in fact oppressed them. First of all, they did not follow the right path. So God in his mercy sent a guide to lead them to the right path. Even then they did not believe him, and they demanded a miracle from him. When the miracle was shown, they rejected it, and persisted in their disbelief. In addition, they started to persecute the prophets and their followers. Thus, when no more means were left to bring them to the right path, divine wrath befell them, and they were wiped off the face of history due to their disbelief and rejection. It was for this reason that the Holy Prophet, the seal of the prophets, did not use such miracles for the propagation of the religion of Islam, since they were temporary, sensory, and decisive, due to which, if someone believed out of fear, he was saved, otherwise he was destroyed. The Holy Prophet, by the command of God, did not choose this path of inviting people to his religion because he was a mercy for all worlds. Otherwise, he too, like the previous prophets, was asked for decisive miracles by his adversaries, as mentioned in the Quran. And they say, "We will never believe in you until you cause a spring to gush forth from the earth for us, or there be for you a garden of date palms and grapes, and then in its midst you cause the rivers to gush forth explosively, or cause the heavens to fall upon us in pieces, as you assert, or bring Allah and the angels before us, face to face, or there be for you a house of gold, or you ascend to heaven, and we shall never believe in your ascending until you cause a book to be sent down to us which we may read. Say, Muhammad, glory be to my Lord. Am I anything but a man, a messenger?" Surah 17, ayat 90 to 93. From the above verses, it is clear that the adversaries of the Holy Prophet used to demand miracles from him time and again. But God and the Prophet did not accept their demand, since it is obvious they were not going to accept the results of these miracles, as is clearly evident from the above verses in which the thoughts of the adversaries are expressed. That is, according to their thoughts, even after showing them 6 great miracles, they would not believe until a book was brought down for each of them individually, which would be the 7th miracle, so that they may read this book carefully and then decide according to their intellect whether Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam, who had brought down the book and given it to them, was indeed the Prophet of God or not. Note the extent of their rejection. How far from reality it is. The same rejection based on ignorance had reached its ultimate end in the behavior of their predecessor as well. It is because of this that after showing a pattern of temporary sensory miracles, God stopped them in the cycle of the prophethood of the Holy Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam till the resurrection. As it is said, "Nothing hinders us from sending signs save that the ancient people belied them. We gave to Thamud the she-camel as a clear sign, but they were unjust to her. We do not send signs except to warn." Surah 17, ayat 59. After this elaboration of miracles, we want to explain those points which are necessary in connection with the understanding of temporary sensory miracles. All kinds of sensory miracles occur to the 5 senses, i.e., they are experienced by man with his eye, ear, nose, mouth, and skin. Thus, with respect to these senses, we can call these miracles visual, auditory, olfactory, gustatory, and tactile miracles. Further, 3 types of miracles happen to each of these senses, which may be called revelatory, tanzili, allegorical, tamthili, and subjugative, taskiri miracles. Thus, altogether, there are 15 kinds of sensory miracles. God willing, we will explain those realities and recognitions about these kinds of miracles from which every fortunate seeker of knowledge through the right senses will be intellectually satisfied, and if he were to try to test them on an experimental standard, their value and status would be enhanced for him, and he will be able to ascertain that such precious and rare gems of knowledge and wisdom cannot be found except in the spiritual treasure of the living and present Imam. We will now present an example of all kinds of sensory miracles in the form of an abstract so that the meaning of the subject may be easily understood by the readers. Temporary intellectual miracle. It is that given knowledge or profound wisdom of the Prophet or the Wali which God, the Wise, grants them. With respect to the cosmic cycle, it is called a temporary miracle. The purpose of this profound miracle is to assure people of the fact that the Prophet or Wali has come from God to guide them, so that they may benefit from his guidance. Although the word wisdom is not a term of miracle, nor have the masses discovered the reality that some of the miracles of the perfect man are such that they are related to knowledge and intellect. Yet for a sound intellect, it is an irrefutable fact that just as his extraordinary sensory miracles influence our external senses, so do his intellectual miracles influence our internal senses. Therefore, it is realistic to accept that the Prophet or the Wali by his God-given spiritual power can show not only sensory miracles, but also intellectual miracles to the human intellects, irrespective of whether somebody attains guidance from such miracles or ignores them. Sensory miracles as a whole do not compel the adversaries to follow the right path. Rather, in addition to creating certainty, their effect is also to create more doubts in their hearts. In this case, the balance of their choice remains intact, and this sensory miracle with respect to guidance becomes only an ordinary awareness. Similarly, intellectual miracles do not compel the masses to come to the right path by force or compulsion. Rather, in comparison to sensory miracles, more doubts are created in them by the intellectual miracles. An obvious reason for which is that there is no external fear in the intellectual miracles, as they are not among the overpowering sensory miracles of the prophets. Now, we are also going to show the miraculous occurrence of the profound wisdom in the light of the Quran, as God says, "The hour, resurrection has come near, and the moon is rent asunder spiritually. If they see a sign, miracle, they turn away and say, 'This is the same magic continuing,' and belie it, and follow their own vain desires, while every affair has an appointed time. Verily, there have come to them tidings, deterring them from evil, containing consummate wisdom, yet warnings were of no avail. So, O Muhammad, withdraw from them." Surah 54, Ayat 1 to 6. One of the purports of the above-mentioned verses is that the miracles which are demanded of the Prophet of the last time will happen in different forms of the resurrection, because one prominent distinction between the previous prophets and the Holy Prophet is that he, as the seal of the prophets, is the prophet of the cycle of resurrection. Therefore, the intellectual miracles of the awliya of the entire cycle and the last miracle of the great cosmic resurrection are all his miracles. Another clear purport of these verses is that the sensory miracles which needed to be shown externally have already been shown in appropriate times of the cosmic cycle. The news of these miracles have been conveyed to those who came later, and their ta'wil as a whole can be found in the consummate wisdom. Another name of this consummate wisdom is abundant good, as the Quran says, He gives wisdom to whom He wills, and he who is given wisdom is indeed given abundant good, but none remembers except man of intellect. Surah 2, Ayah 269. By reflecting upon these two verses in the light of intellect and wisdom, we come to know the comprehensive point that just as the place of miracle is at the apex of sensory wonders, the place of wisdom is at the apex of intellectual wonders. Then, at the conjunction of sensory and intellectual height, they, miracle and wisdom, are as connected to one another as the human body and soul. That is, the external act of wisdom is called miracle, and the internal esoteric knowledge of miracle is called wisdom, and the name in which their complete and real implications are found together is called ayat, the plural of which is ayat, as mentioned in the Quran. Verily, we gave to Musa 9 clear miracles, ayat. So asked the children of Israel when he came to them, and the Pharaoh said to him, Verily, I think that you, O Musa, are bewitched. Surah 17, Ayat 101. From the Quranic verse, it is clear that what is called miracles, mu'jizat, in general terms, are called ayat in special terms. The wonders or miracles which Musa had shown to the Pharaoh and his people to frighten them were rod, drought, deluge, locusts, white hand, lice, blood, frogs, and the wreath of fruits. These sensory trials were called ayat, i.e. miracles, not only because they had appeared extraordinarily, but also because ta'wil, i.e. wisdom, was hidden in their appearance and which is still there. Thus, it is true to say that a collection of Quranic words is also called an ayat, but not only because it is a collection of letters and words, but also for the reason that it is the speech of God in which lies wisdom. These arguments are sufficient in order to prove that there are temporary intellectual miracles, i.e. wisdom. Permanent sensory miracle. It is that wondrous feat of a prophet which remains present with the same glory and majesty before the human senses, even after his demise, and there is not the slightest degree in its characteristics. Thus, except for the two great permanent sensory and intellectual miracles of the Holy Prophet, the miracles of the rest of the prophets have ceased with the end of their pure physical lives. Nothing is now traceable about them except the traditions related to them. Thus, it is logically correct to call them temporary miracles, although every religious person, forcing himself by the power of dogma, may superficially say with regard to the occurrence of such miracles, the omnipotent God can do whatever He likes, and the ibda'i command, i.e. to create something contrary to the existing way of creation, is not difficult for Him. Yet, in the recesses of his heart, he may continue to have many intricate questions about these traditions, and his yearning for investigations will always urge him to know how the she-camel of Hazrat Salih alayhi salam was born from a rock, How did Hazrat Dawood alayhi salam make armor from the iron without melting it? Is it true that the rod of Hazrat Musa alayhi salam used to turn into a dragon? What kind of dead people used to be revived by Hazrat Isa alayhi salam, while there are two types of dead people, those who are dead but appear to be alive, and those who are alive but appear to be dead? Are these and other such traditions real events, or are they allegories which have ta'wil? In connection with this subject, we have now reached a point where we have to answer the imminent question. What were the two permanent sensory miracles of the Holy Prophet? The answer is that his two permanent sensory miracles were the Holy Quran and the living and present Imam. They are found in every cycle as the Book of God and His light, and in reality they cannot be separated from one another, and their mutual link also is of a miraculous kind, both externally and internally. That is, when we try to establish a proof by a verse, a hadith, or a rational argument that the Quran itself is a miracle, then together with this, the proof of the permanent manifestation of the Imam of the time and his inseparable link with the Quran is also automatically in front of the eye of insight. Conversely, if we start by establishing the ever-presence of the Imam, the presence of a book, i.e. the Quran, will automatically be established for us externally and internally. Now, seeking the power of explanation from the court of the mercy of God, who has not left the scarcity of anything or any obstacle in knowledge, nor any untiable knot in Islam, as the Holy Quran says, He has chosen you from among other communities and has not laid upon you any hardship in injunctions of religion. Surah 22, Ayat 78. We try to answer the question about the two permanent sensory miracles of the Prophet. The elaborate answer is that the Holy Quran is unprecedented not only in esoteric sciences, but also in the comprehensiveness of the beauties and wonders of the exoteric sciences as well. Thus, in Surah 17, Ayat 88, the Holy Quran is accepted not only as the unprecedented book of knowledge and wisdom, but also as the miracle of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam, which is, say, even if man and jinn get together to produce the like of the Quran, they will not be able to produce the like of it, though some of them become helpers of others. Here arises a very important question that though we definitely believe in the command of God and that whatever He deems to be impossible is impossible, can we know the reason for not being able to produce a book like the Quran despite the cooperation of the man and jinn, and why the united power of knowledge becomes an abortive attempt? The only answer to this question is that the wise Quran is entirely wisdom. That is, the way the reality of the Quran is embodied in words on the basis of the comprehensive principles of the meanings and its style, according to which far-reaching examples are used in it in a way not known to any of the men or jinn. The reason for this is that although the Holy Quran is in front of their external senses, none of them can analyze its meanings. For had it been possible for the particular intellect of man or jinn to analyze the meanings of its letters, words and verses, and look into them as a workman does into a machine, then they would have come to know the principles upon which the Quran is based, and its knowledge would have been accessible to all, and they would have been able to write such a book. For when a workman knows about the exterior and interior of something, he is able to produce a thing like it. From the above example, it is established that man and jinn are unable not only to produce a book like the Quran, but also to understand its wisdom. Then, if the man and jinn together are unable to understand and produce the like of the Quran, despite it being present in front of their senses, why should it not be accepted as a great sensory miracle? We have to establish and show what are the proofs on the basis of which the Imam of the time can be accepted as the miracle of Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wasallam, and what the mutual link of the Holy Quran and the present Imam is from the same above mentioned verse. The answer is that the revelation of the Holy Quran for the exoteric and esoteric guidance of man and the incomprehensibility of the Quranic realities by the human intellect is a firm proof of the necessity of the ever-presence of a teacher in this world. A teacher whom God has sent down spiritually as his light, and physically the Holy Prophet has appointed as his successor, so that there should not be any argument of people against God regarding the difficulties of the Quran and the guidance concerning the present conditions. Thus, it is a fact that the light of the Quran in the attire of the human body is always present and living, and is the guardian in this world, and he is called the Imam of the time or the perfect man. Then, if someone does not recognize him as the divine light, since, due to the expediency of wisdom, he has an external relation to an human body and its necessities, this will be analogous to someone who does not accept the Quran to be the speech of God, because it is made of material things, such as paper, ink, letters and words, and it never occurs to him that since it is an heavenly book, it is hence possible for it to be a rare treasure of divine knowledge, clothed in the veil of these material things. Thus, in view of these arguments, the proclamation of God in the above mentioned verse contains not only the uniqueness of the Holy Quran, but also the Imam of the time. Because the Quran and the Imam in reality are one light. Therefore, in this divine declaration, it is also stated to all human beings and jinn that if they are not sure of the true Imams being from God, and therefore consider the office of Imamat a general result of individual or collective effort, they should also unitedly choose a perfect man who, in his external and internal attributes, is like the true Imam, and the chain of the office of his Imamat continues in his progeny till the resurrection, in the same way as the attributes of the true Imam are in front of the human senses. It is obvious that for all human beings and jinns, it is and will remain impossible to establish such an example. Thus, it is true to say that the physical, permanent presence of the Imam of the time is another permanent sensory miracle of the Holy Prophet. Over the 4 subsequent pages, an example of each of the kinds of sensory miracles is given in the form of an abstract in order to facilitate the reader's understanding of the subject. Permanent intellectual miracles. Prior to discussing these miracles, it is necessary to know that they too include the characteristics of temporary intellectual miracles mentioned already. It should be known that the Holy Prophets' two permanent intellectual miracles also are the Quran and the Imam. Prior to this, they have been established as two permanent sensory miracles. Now, here we have to explain how they can also be the two permanent intellectual miracles. The proof of this is that the consummate wisdom which God had given to the Holy Prophet by the name of abundant good still exists in the position of the wisdom of the Quran and the teacher of the Quran. These two intellectual miracles are weighty and so full of extensive guidance and wisdom of the infinite material and spiritual progress of all creatures that man and jinns with their collective intellectual strengths are unable to bear them simultaneously. It is because of this that the Holy Prophet called them Thaqlain, two heavy things, and addressing his community he said, I am leaving two heavy things among you. Before we continue, let us look at the Quranic examples of sensory miracles. 1. Example. Angels came to the house of Hazrat Ibrahim alayhi salam in a human body. Kind of sensory miracle? Visual. Argument. Since they were angels, therefore they declined to eat. Quranic reference. Surah 51, Ayah 23 to 27. 2. Hazrat Maryam alayhi salam heard the voice of the embodied Holy Spirit. Kind of sensory miracle? Auditory. Argument. Externally, not in imagination. Surah 19, Ayat 17 to 26. 3. Example. The people of Ad smelt the smell of chastisement. Kind of sensory miracle? Olfactory. Argument. There was a violent wind in which there was a smell as well. Surah 54, Ayat 18 to 20. 4. Disciples of Jesus ate heavenly food. Kind of sensory miracle? Gustatory. Argument. To say in the verse, a table from the heaven is sufficient proof of the things being heavenly. Surah 5, Ayat 111 to 115. 5. Some wicked people hamstrung the she-camel of Hazrat Sali. Kind of sensory miracle? Tactile. Had it not been a solid heavenly thing, then the question of hamstringing the she-camel would not have arisen. Surah 91, Ayat 13 to 14. 6. Disobedient fishermen were seen becoming apes. Kind of sensory miracle? Visual. Argument. It is not difficult for he who gives to clay the form of Adam to give to human beings the form of apes. Surah 2, Ayat 62 to 64. 7. Hazrat Isa spoke to people at his birth. Kind of sensory miracle? Auditory. If the Holy Spirit can speak without a body, is it not strange to speak from the tongue of a baby? Surah 19, Ayah 28 to 30. 8. Hazrat Yaqub felt the fragrance of Hazrat Yusuf from an extraordinary distance. Kind of sensory miracle? Olfactory. Due to the control of everything by the spiritual power, it brings not only fragrance, but also everything. Surah 12, Ayat 95. 9. For Pharaoh and his people, the drinking water turned into blood. Kind of miracle? Gustatory. If water turns into blood through the bodies of animals, it is not difficult for God to turn it into blood without any means. Surah 7, Ayat 133. 10. Qarun was swallowed up by the earth. Kind of miracle? Tactile, the effect of which started from the skin. Surah 28, Ayat 81. 11. Hazrat Sulaiman's kingdom was seen by the people. Kind of sensory miracle? Visual. Argument: it is an universally accepted tradition that wind, birds and jinns were obedient to him. 12. Hazrat Dawood's melodiousness was heard by the people. Kind of sensory miracle? Auditory. Argument: in addition to human beings, even the mountains and the birds used to delight in his voice. Surah 21, Ayat 79. 13. The Holy Prophet used to smell heavenly fragrance from the right side. Kind of sensory miracle? Olfactory. Yaman also means the right side. The Holy Prophet has said, I feel the breath of the compassionate from the direction of Yaman. 14. Manna and quails used to reveal for the children of Israel for a certain time. Kind of sensory miracle? Gustatory. Argument: when it is universally accepted that everything comes from paradise, it is not amazing if some kind of food is provided by the prayer of a prophet. Surah 2, Ayat 57. 15. The shadow of clouds used to be on the children of Israel. Kind of sensory miracle? Tactile. Argument: the effect of the clouds is first felt by the skin. Surah 2, Ayat 57. Notes to examples of sensory miracles. 1. In some of these examples, more than one characteristics may be found. For instance, in the items of the table of Hazrat Isa, there were the characteristics of visual, olfactory and tactile miracles, in addition to the gustatory characteristics. But since they were edible things, they are therefore included in the gustatory miracle. 2. In the Holy Quran, countless miracles events are mentioned, but for the sake of brevity, we have mentioned only one event as an example of every kind. 3. By revelatory, tanzili are meant those things which appeared from behind the veil of the unseen. By allegorical, tamthili are meant those things which miraculously adopted an unusual state. And by subjugatory, taskiri are meant those things which have unusually become subservient to someone. Continuing on the permanent intellectual miracles, it has already been explained that the main purpose of showing miracles is that people may accept the performer of the miracles as the prophet or wali of God and believe in him. This means that the miracle in reality is like a practical witness for the proof of prophethood or wilayat. Thus, even from this aspect of miracle, we can establish and show that these two permanent intellectual miracles of the Holy Prophet are two such witnesses of his prophethood, and they are always in this world both in a sensory and an intellectual existence, which in fulfilling the conditions of witness are greater than the entire existence. They can neither be refuted nor effaced, as God says, "Those who disbelieve say, 'You are not a messenger of Allah.' Say, O Muhammad, Allah is sufficient as a witness between me, my prophethood, and you, and he who has knowledge of the book. Surah 13, Ayat 43. That is, internally, spiritually, God and the light of Imamat, and externally, physically, the Quran and the person of Imamat are such sufficient witnesses that there is the complete knowledge of the secrets of the Holy Prophet's prophethood in their essence, and no matter what kind of witness the people may ask about his prophethood, they will always provide it without the slightest deficiency. Now, if someone asks, on what basis can it be said and accepted that the light of Imamat is the unique teacher of the science of the Quran, the perfect confidante of the secrets of prophethood, and the absolute witness of the prophethood of Hazrat Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam? In answer, the first proof is that in his speech there is truth and justice to the utmost degree, as he says, and perfect is the word of your Lord in truth and justice. Surah 6, Ayat 116. Therefore, it is impossible that God may choose a person from among the people to be the witness of the prophethood of Hazrat Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wa alihi wasallam and give the title of sufficient witness to the one who cannot witness his prophethood equally in the past, present and future, and cannot simultaneously be witnessed both in sensory and in intellectual forms, who knows some of the secrets of prophethood and not others, and who knows the ta'wil of a part of the Quran and remains unaware of the rest. This is not possible. Thus, the fact is that the one whom God has called sufficient witness and the bearer of the heavenly knowledge knows and does everything regarding the witnessing of his, Hazrat Muhammad's prophethood. Thus, such a witness is the light of Imamat and nobody else. Second proof, the wisdom which is in the word sufficient is also in the word shaheed, which in Arabic means witness, present. The reason for this is that someone can be a witness of a matter only if he has been present and seen it. Thus, such a person is the light of Imamat, who has seen everything in the position of the divine light. Third proof. As we have shown in the first proof, Quranic words are full of truth and justice. Therefore, reflect upon the following Quranic example with truth and justice. The example is, he who is knowing of the Quran and he with whom is the knowledge of the book. There is a world of difference between the two phrases. The purport of the former is a person who sees the Quran and has its knowledge, whereas the meaning of the latter is a person with whom is the very knowledge of the book itself. In addition, this phrase also means that here the usage of the word al-kitab, the book, instead of the Quran is proof of the fact that this means the universal book, namely Kitab, or the mother of the book, because all books have a collective book called Kitab, which according to the Quran, Hadith and logical demonstration is Maulana Ali alayhi salam, whose light is the Imam of the time and in whose light is contained the knowledge of the first and the last ones.